Young women have been growing up with an indoctrination of what womanhood is and what it should be. They've been taught everything that is in direct opposition to the Word of God. Young women who want to be different from the world are rare, but they are real. On this Rare But Real podcast, Audrey Broggie will often be joined by her daughter, Grace Anna, and her daughters-in-law, Maureen, Kesset, and Marilyn, who desire to be discerning in a day when everything seems to go against God's design. Join them in the journey of becoming rare but real. It takes courage and conviction. And now, Audrey Broggie.
Hey, I'm so glad to be back. We're back after a little bit of a break with part 3 of what I've called, well, it's a series on home education. I've ended up calling it Learning at Home. And we did the first 2 podcasts in June, and I can't believe it's August already. But this series on home education, I wanted to do it especially because people are making those kinds of decisions about the next school year, and they typically do those in the summer, probably before now, but still, hopefully today will be an encouragement to you. And I wanted to do it too because we get asked so many questions about it, I guess because now Carl and I are vintage homeschoolers, and because our children are all grown and we're old, and because we do a homeschool seminar, actually Carl does that once a year, and then this year I did an encouragement night for the moms who are in the thick of homeschooling or have been in the thick of homeschooling, and of course we get asked all those questions because I did homeschool all of my children, and of course back in the 80s it was a decision that Carl and I did not take lightly, and on the first in this series I shared my journey, and then the second in the series, the last conversation was with my daughter-in-law Kesset, who shared about her homeschooling journey, and that was the second in the series. And today I have my daughter-in-law, my first daughter-in-law, Maureen, and she's with me and she's going to share her journey. So hello, Maureen. I'm glad you're here.
Hey, Audrey. I am glad to be back. It feels good to start. It's not the fall, but it feels like fall as school is approaching and we can get back into routines, and I always like that part of the school year.
Yeah, and everything's it's kind of like fresh and new and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But as we get started, you and Jordan homeschooled your children in their early years, and of course, I want you to share, just like Kesset did, how you made that decision and what that was like for you in those early years, and all the different things that you did and that you used, and how God used it to mold and shape not only your children, but how He used it to mold and shape you and Jordan as you took on that responsibility and that journey of home educating your children. And of course, then you made the transition to a Christian school, and with this year coming up, you'll have all of your children in a Christian school. And I know that too wasn't a decision that you and Jordan made lightly. You gave it a lot of thought. Right. You did your homework. You prayed through it, and all those kinds of things. And so, for all of you who are listening, I told Maureen earlier I wanted to maybe divide this podcast up into 3 sections. And of course, she'll be taking over the floor in just a minute because I want her to really share her story, and I might interrupt her or whatever. But the first part is I want you, Maureen, to share your experience and journey with the homeschooling part, because you did it for a number of years, a long time, and then I want you to share your experience and journey and the decision-making process of transitioning your children to a Christian school, and of course, first with your boys and now with your girls. And because they'll all of them will be going this coming up school year. And then the third section of the podcast, I want you to share, if you will, some of the lessons you've learned and the things maybe that God has done and is doing in your life, and maybe even some of your personal journey as you made these kinds of decisions. What was hard? What was easy? What was a struggle or whatever? And we all second guess ourselves all the time as moms, no matter what.
That's right.
We just do. And so with that all being said, I do want to go ahead and give the floor to you, Maureen. And as I said a few minutes ago, I may interrupt you or I may not. I may just let you talk the entire length of the podcast. So you have added. And of course, always we want we always pray before we start these podcasts, and that God would be honored, and that that people who are listening would be edified, and that God would use the things that we share. And and not only that, but that it would be a fun and encouraging time. And as you know, and I hope that's true today as Maureen shares what's gone on in her family. So go ahead, Maureen.
That's right. So as I think back over homeschooling, our oldest, I mean, for those of you who have listened to all of the podcasts, which I'm sure there are some of you, but just to remind you, Jordan and I have Jack, who's 16. He's going to be a junior. Luke is 14. He's going to be in 9th grade. Claire's 12, 7th grade. Grace is 10, and she's going to enter into the 5th grade. And then, as I've talked about before, and I'll mention just a little bit today, we had Jane here with us for a couple of years. She would be 7 right now. She died 6 years ago. But as Jordan and I got married in 2004, after dating all through high school and college, and got married after Jordan graduated, the first time I'd ever heard about homeschooling is when I met the Broggie family. So I was 9 or 10 years old, and I remember I'd never heard of that. So of course I shouldn't say of course, because maybe it's not of course, but for me it wasn't of course, it was strange. It was like, oh, what's that? And I remember being up at my dad's produce stand, asking him about his school and what that looked like, and his like kind of rhythm of the day, and then how he was able to complete his work, at lunchtime to then come and work for my dad. So that was always interesting to me. And then as our, at 15, when we officially started to like each other,
when y'all started talking.
Right. So we were special friends, Audrey. Then I kind of entered in. Our family had moved away for a few years after I originally met the Brogies, and we were back in South Carolina, and we were now members at CBC in Beaufort. And so I was, friends with a lot of kids in our youth group who were also homeschooled. So this was now like the norm in my life. To be honest, I kind of felt like the abnormal person in that group of friends who went to school, but it wasn't. And I see so much of God's hand and sovereignty in that, and having me at school and the Bible study I was able to lead. He grew me a lot during that time of my life. So I'm very thankful. But then we'll fast forward to, we got married in 2004, and we had Jack in May of 2006. I don't want to say we never talked about school options when he was a baby, but probably not too much. But I do know when we moved to Atlanta and Jack was 2, it was our real estate agent who first asked me if I had enrolled Jack in a preschool. And I said, well, of course not. He's 2. And he said, well, if you don't have him enrolled in something, good luck, because he's not going to be able to get into anything. So, of course, I kind of started to panic a little bit, because we hadn't really decided what we were doing. And Jordan quickly was like, Maureen, that is not true. Like, don't even let that, don't even give that another thought. But what I did do, so I'm thankful for that man, searching what schools were around us, if there were even any schools that I would send our children to. I stumbled upon a school that I really liked, but I kind of just tucked that away. Anyway, fast forward to when Jack was 4, we were really considering the process. We had one school in mind that we did apply to, and we were praying so much that the Lord would show us. This was a school, too, that had a neat setup where in kindergarten you only went 3 days a week. But it was considered a full-time school, and it was, I don't know, I just like that idea. But then I always thought, I love the idea of homeschooling my kids, to be with them when they're little and to be their primary influence. So we were just praying. And of course, as Audrey mentioned at the beginning of this, all moms have fears and worries. And of course, mine then was like, what if my kids don't know how to read? How silly is that to think, what if my kid is illiterate forever if I homeschool him? But then I really started praying about that, and simultaneously, which again, I've talked about how I have multiple sclerosis in another podcast. That's also kind of in tandem the timeline of me starting to get to the right doctor to be diagnosed. And so, of course, all my friends were like, of course, Jack's going to go to school. Like, you have this health issue that we don't even know about yet. You have Luke now, who's 3, Claire. And then a couple weeks later, I would find out I was expecting Grace. But I still did not feel easy about that. So I kept praying. And as a side note, Jack was like our bookworm. He always had a book with him. He loved it. And so he pretty much had every book in our home memorized. So I was like, well, how am I going to figure out how to teach him to read? Because he can read any of these books to me because he has them memorized. We've read them so much. So I went one day and pulled out a book that we had never read. I'm not even going to share the name of it because I personally thought it was an annoying book. So I intentionally, I hid it because I didn't want him to find it because I didn't want to read it to him, which I know is very selfish.
But you pulled it out.
Yeah, I pulled it out because I was like, I wonder what Jack was like 4.5, close to 5. And I remember thinking, I know he knows some basic phonics.
Right.
I wonder what he actually knows without having things memorized. So I pulled this book out. The other kids were sleeping. And we sit up on my bed, and of course he was excited because he thought we had a new book. And I told him it actually wasn't new. And I told him the whole story. We laughed, and he opened it up, and he proceeded to read the entire book to me, word perfect. And I was just like, okay, is that Lord answering my prayer? I mean, I've been praying basically, which is silly to put an ultimatum before the Lord. I was like, if you want Jack to go to school, then he won't be able to read by the time it's time for him to go. And if you want me to homeschool him, I just asked that he would somehow be able to read at some level. I mean, I had such little faith in, obviously, but
God is very compassionate, and he understands us.
Yeah, and he knows my frame, and that I'm weak in that. But anyway, so then I did go to the bookstore, and I bought all these brand new books. And Jack, from that day forward, was a reader. He never looked back. So I don't even really know. Like, people ask, when did Jack start reading? I'm like, I don't know. I thought he knew had all these books memorized, but maybe he was reading more than what I thought he was.
Right.
All that to say, the day that happened was the end of March of 2011. And the next day I found out I had multiple sclerosis. And I said to Jordan, and we also got our acceptance letter into this Christian school where Jack was going to go. You had to apply. And
I remember that.
And Jack got in. So it was like, I have MS officially. Jack can read. Andy's in at this school. But I never felt more convinced I needed to homeschool him. It was just like, I remember just throwing away the acceptance letter. I was like, no, we're homeschooling. And Jordan was fine with that. Jordan with schooling was always very prayerful and involved with it. But at the end of the day, he was like, you are the one like actively doing it.
Right,
like,
right.
You're with them and home all day. So yes, I want to help you as you need help, but like, I do trust you to make some of these decisions. So he was thrilled about that. I started teaching Jack. Of course, then, as you know, Audrey, and any of you listeners, when you're teaching one kid, all of your other kids want to learn.
Of course,
and they're all around. So then you get the little toys for them to play with, and it was great. And then we did that Jack's kindergarten year, but then his first grade year, and I'm sure you remember this, Audrey. Jack went to that hybrid, the homeschool hybrid in Jordan. It was close to where Jordan was working at the time, so he would take him. It was a 2-day a week. A Tuesday, Thursday, he would ride in with Jordan. Jordan would take him, and I would pick him up after lunch. And with that, though, I know the Lord used that in my life. He did that his first grade year. And I love that model because I had never learned before that you can teach your kid at home like 2 focus days and have 2 or 3 where they're just now executing and doing the new principles that they've recently been taught.
Right.
So I don't have, because I was very worried about, I have all these kids, like, how am I going to have time to, like, sit down and teach them? And
right.
But God just worked that out. And I feel like for that hybrid was just in our life for a short season because God, again, was, like, helping me. And I was, like, questioning and doubting if I could do it. And then he gave us this hybrid, which was great.
Like giving you confidence, like building your confidence. Yeah,
exactly. It gave me confidence and it equipped me. And we didn't send Jack back for the second year because I was like, no, he can just come home. Luke is starting kindergarten and we can do the same model. So I did that at home. Yeah. And then when they were younger, it was really more like 2 days of teaching, 2 days of work and of course I was around. They had questions. I would ask them, and then Fridays were like our test days and quizzes, and we had extra time of reading, and it was great, and I loved that. We did that for several years, And during that time, I started honing in on, I guess, the model of teaching I really wanted to use. And I really liked the classical method. So I even went 2 summers in Kentucky to learn how to properly execute that in your home and what it looks like with 1 kid or 7 kids, or 2 kids, and how to manage your time and how to teach that method to your kids effectively. So that led me to this curriculum, Memoria Prep.
Right, I remember that too.
Yeah, and I loved it too because it was very organized, and that it had I could get the boys going in the morning. They returned to their date, their little planner, and they would see all the little seat work that they could get started. Right. Until I got the girls settled, and they could just be working on their stuff. That we would come and have devotions. I mean, it was such a sweet time in our family. I love that time. I loved our little schoolroom.
I know. I mean, I like, it's so funny, Maureen, hearing you talk about it, because I think about, sometimes I feel nostalgic about the stuff with my kids, but I feel nostalgic about the stuff with your kids too.
I know, but even with that, Audrey, that was I would be able to send Jack and Luke, just, spend a week or so with you and Carl and just send their little planner with and their books. And it was very easy for you to go through and say, okay, well, you need to do these 3 pages of math today. And for me, I love that. And I know for other families, just like you've shared before, everyone doesn't have to do the same curriculum to make it effective or great. Right. But for me, as someone that came from a non-homeschooling path, I really wanted to understand what I was doing with my kids, because as I've heard you say, you didn't want your kids to be dumb. And I didn't want mine to be dumb. And it was so I was no, I want to equip myself to even those 2 summers that I mentioned of going to Kentucky under the school to learn, and they would help homeschool moms. And I just gained so much from that and had so much more confidence in everything the Lord along the way, whether it was the hybrid, whether it was, 1 year, Audrey, you would remember this, I hired a lady to come to our home 3 mornings a week. Right. And she would come for 2 to 3 hours, just depending on kind of what the girls' schedules were. And I could give undivided teaching time to the boys, and then Claire when she was in kindergarten. And again, everyone can't do that or doesn't want to do that, and they could still be just as effective. So I'm not saying that you need to do that. But for our family, it worked out great. And I was still kept that same model of I don't have to actually sit with it and teach a subject for 3 hours a day for them to get it. Right. And so we were just kind of plugging along with that. But I do want to say to the listeners that we definitely took homeschooling as a year by year. And I don't know what it was. Probably, we live in the Atlanta area. And I feel like November is the time that everyone starts amping up for what the school decisions will be for the following year. Wow. And November. That's what we see. It seems so early to us and kind of overwhelming. And then they have all these deadlines, in the winter. And we've always been well, what if we don't know in January what we want to do? Right. So, but again, even with that, God's been faithful to show us. But we really have each year gone before the Lord with our kids and asked Him to show us, is this working? Is this what you have for us? And He continued to affirm that during those 10 years over and over. So we never even questioned it. And I stuck with the same curriculum all throughout. I know some families switch things up and try new things, so that's great too. But for me, maybe being a control freak over that, I really liked sticking with the same thing, and it worked really well.
Do you feel like, because I know you mentioned earlier about having MS, and people were saying well, of course you're going to put your kids in school and stuff. Do you feel like with your diagnosis of MS that it was even, you felt more once you got your, feet in the water a little bit, you felt like that was even better that you had your kids at home, even in spite of, maybe even because you had MS and you were dealing with that it was even more, I don't know what word I'm looking for.
Evidence that they were supposed to be home.
Yeah.
It was. And it was, the only way, even when I tell that story to people, sometimes they're really? Yeah. Maybe you want to take all the time for you to be in physical therapy 5 days a week. Right. To do certain things or to try things. And I just was
I want
that
them
was
close.
not what, yeah, I wanted them close.
Yeah.
And I was scared, not really knowing what that journey was going to look like.
Yeah.
Still 11 years later, I really don't even know what the next year's going to
Well,
look
it even
like.
gave you
But
a focus too, where you're not like
Right.
just focused on you do what you have to do for MS, of course, and the things your doctor wants. But at the same time, you can't just and when I say sit around, I don't mean, but I'm saying like I still have to build into my kids. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, because I've heard you say that before. Like you didn't want to just be focused on the MS, you wanted to be focused on your kids.
Well, and that's always the thing, like in my journey and our journey, Jordan and myself, like God knew that I was going to have MS.
Right.
In 2011. He knew that. He knew we were going to have 5 children. He
Mm-hmm.
knew that one was going to die unexpectedly. Like God already knew all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I already knew that when I married Jordan and, the two of us started a family and then God continued to multiply it, 5 more people we added to it,
Mm-hmm.
that my calling was a wife and a mom. And so whether I had MS or was
Mm-hmm.
bereaved of a child, like my calling did not change.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's so
it
good.
it became with each little thing or big thing that happened. Yes, it became trickier or
Mhm.
harder at times to navigate. But that is one thing.
But it didn't change.
No,
Yeah.
and I never woke up in the morning and felt like I can't do this. Like I just need to get rid of the kids or focus on myself or. And ladies, I'm not saying that I've never had days that a break wouldn't be nice.
Of course,
I think all mothers have thought that. So I just mean in the grand scheme of things,
Of course.
my way and mine and Jordan's way was not, well, you have this disease, so shove off the kids.
Right.
Or then when Jane died, it wasn't, well, now you have one less child under with you, so don't really care about the ones who are left. No, if anything, that grounded us even more in the fact of no, God has called us to this role. Yes, it's harder now because there's days that are incredibly hard and sad, or even days where you feel bad about the way things have shaken out sometimes.
Right.
But continually just trying to stay fixed and focused on, hey, do I believe in God's sovereignty or not? And the answer is yes. So if I do, I have to willingly submit to his will. And I can't try to act like I'm going to be able to pull the veil up and understand and know all the whys to my questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of those, I suspect I won't know fully until I'm in heaven.
Right.
And I have to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
So then we're going to go fast forward to the winter of 2015. I feel like maybe I'm intersecting some of your questions, but I
That's
think
okay.
in the end I think in the end it's going to be okay. But
Oh, yeah.
I think it was November of 2015, and we heard about this new homeschool hybrid that was starting, and actually it was going to be held in our church. It wasn't like Church of the Apostles homeschool hybrid. It was a different school that was using our facility for it. And it was 2 days a week, and we loved the idea. I mean, it did sound really great. It was like, wow, that's our church home. That's like our kids' second home. They know that place like the back of their hand. Like, let's go check this out. So Jordan and I went and checked it out. And to be honest, Jordan seemed really excited about it. And I was kind of excited for them to go and even to have more of the social. And there were some more sports and different things that I had never done with the kids. But I didn't really love some of the curriculum choices, and not because they were fundamentally bad. It just was different from what I've been doing.
Right.
So I think it's just like anything. You become a creature of habit.
Sure.
And it's kind of and I mean, I had to get to a point where I was like, it's not like Maureen's way is the best way. Right. And that's definitely where the Lord broke me with that. And also, so we came home that night. There was a series of going to look at the school and meet the teachers and the principal and different families. And I felt like during the time Jordan was more and more some of the things he didn't love, but he felt like we need to keep pursuing this. And then I remember feeling is there something he's not telling me? He thinks my way of homeschooling is broken. And we need to get the kids in this hybrid thing to fix the problem. And so I was having a little bit of those feelings. I wish he would just tell me if he doesn't like something I'm doing. I never thought anything was wrong, but then I would ask him and he'd say, Maureen, it's not I don't think, I mean, Jordan's very much like, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it.
Right.
But he was like, for whatever it is with this, Maureen, I feel like we need to keep pursuing it.
Yeah.
All that to say, through that, you asked
Mm-hmm.
about how God's grown me in this process. And I mean, that was, I'm sure there were other times in our marriage by that point that I'd like had to submit to a decision that Jordan was making and kind of come under his leadership and
Mm-hmm.
authority, even though I didn't like particularly agree with it.
Right.
But that was really like the first big decision. I remember feeling like, I don't really love like a couple components about it. And again, it's not that it was like bad in and of itself. For me, it was just different.
Right.
But Jordan just kept saying, we need to pursue, we need to do it, we need to apply. And we did. And I remember I just got to a point where it was like the Lord was just reminding me of my role as a wife, that like, I trust his sovereignty, that I married Jordan. I trust his leadership, and I need to willingly submit to that. And not that Jordan and I were having like a to-do about it, but it was just more me to myself murmuring and wondering.
Right.
But then me getting to a point of like, no, this is it, and you need to follow him. And then you also need to be thankful for his leadership and that you have someone to follow.
Right.
So we got to that point, and really by January of 2016, it was pretty much set. Like the 3 older kids were going to start this homeschool hybrid, which still they were going to be home 3 days a week. Which that was the other thing Jordan kept telling me, like, Maureen, they're not like gone. They're just 2 days a week for 5 hours going to this other thing. So that
I remember that one.
That was like set, and we,
Mm-hmm.
I will say this though, like I wasn't like sour about it. It was like, we're doing it. I switched my mode of like, and I really think it comes down to like my pride and like I was holding on to what I was doing, and then I kind of thought it was being taken away.
Yeah.
Because maybe he thought there was like a shortcoming, but really I should have just asked him.
Right. Because I'm sure that wasn't it. It was.
No, it wasn't at all. And then,
yeah.
And then as I proceed, all the listeners will see why God was doing that. And then we fast forward to April, and Audrey, you were at my house that day with, it was the day you were supposed to leave. And I don't even know if you really remember this, but maybe you do. All of our we lived in a different town, still in the Atlanta area, but we lived in a new place. And a lot of our neighbors' kids who were Grace's age, who she was 4 at the time, were going to this sweet little preschool that wasn't even a mile from our house.
Right.
My other kids had never been to a preschool. I'm not here to make a statement about a preschool.
Right.
Mine didn't. And so we had never been preschool minded.
Mm-hmm.
But I woke up one morning, and it was the morning you were supposed to leave, and it was in April 16th, just feeling like, I need to call the director of that and see if there's a spot for Grace. And I kind of thought maybe I was feeling that way because I felt bad that her siblings were going to be away, and she'd be sad.
Right.
She wasn't old enough. But anyway, I remember going out to the kitchen and saying, can you stay like 2 more hours? Because, and I was kind of worried to be like, hey, I'm going to look at a preschool to put Grace in. Because it was just so different from anything we had ever done.
Right.
But your response was just like, sure, I guess I can stay. And I remember talking to Jordan on the phone, and we were talking about different questions I was going to ask. And I go there, met with the lady, and it seemed great. And they were like, no, we have another spot left. And I mean, basically within a month, we also had Grace signed up to go to that preschool a few mornings a week. So I was thinking in my head, when the home days of the kids would be the days I'd send Grace to the little preschool so I could help them with their schoolwork. All that was like settled and tucked away and planned. And then July of 2016, we woke up one morning to find that Jane was not alive. And it was almost a month from the day that she died, that school was starting. All these different things that we had already paid for and planned and set aside. And I remember this was shortly after Jane's death, not that week, but just feeling so overwhelmed with like God's faithfulness, and that he put that, the Holy Spirit was like nudging Jordan, like, no, keep pursuing this hybrid, keep looking into this. And then me with the preschool thing for Grace, because it was like in such a time where we were so shaken and broken, like our 4 living kids had places a few days a week to go. And I remember even telling all the, teachers and the principals. And of course, they were all so kind and amenable and wanted to do anything to help us. But I remember even saying, I don't even care if they don't learn anything.
Right.
I just want them to go somewhere that's happy.
Right. Right. Oh, I remember. Yeah.
And it was like, so then I knew they could go several days a week, and then they would come home to me and return with big smiles and tell me about their day and bring home their, show and tells or their crafts or the snacks that they had. And that, truly, Audrey, that was like a bright spot that God gave us in a very dark time.
Well, it's just a reminder. It's a reminder how God always goes before us too.
Right. And if I'm honest, there are times where I've also kind of hated that it was unknowingly preparing our family for Jane's death.
I know.
But then I just think, oh, if I had known. And then it's no, the Lord's saying, can you just stop? Trust me. I've held your family. I've paid these ways. You guys know we're not perfect, but we have always tried to honor the Lord in our decisions and to go before Him with major things before we just go upon ourselves. And so I just know God was honoring that. And I remember being flooded with I'm so glad that I didn't put up a fight with Jordan about not wanting the kids to go to that, and just all the things that God protected in our family. And I know that's a little straying away from the homeschooling, but not really, ladies, if you think about it.
No.
Because whether it doesn't have to be something so deep and sad as a death or an illness for you to listen to the Lord and for Him to be faithful, but it may just be, maybe something as wild as your kid is midway through the school year in a school and you just cannot escape the Holy Spirit telling you and your husband that your kid needs to come home.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to make a radical decision that's different for your family when God's leading you in that direction. And sure, there will always be people that question the things that you do. Because then when Jane died, we had people in our life that were well, surely all your kids are going to go to 5-day-a-week full-time school, and then you can just be. But I remember thinking, that sounds awful.
I know. I remember,
days where they had something that was actually perfect. I did feel like those days for 6 hours I could catch my breath.
Right. Of course. And as you said, they had a happy place to go.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all the time.
Exactly. And so from the beginning, it was Jordan and I wanted to be the primary influence in their lives. And not only just from an academic standpoint, but more importantly, from a spiritual standpoint, to share the gospel with them, to read the Bible with them, to help them understand godly principles. I think of even the times that we've had with them at home, first teaching the boys how to work, and Jordan even more so with that, not to have idle hands. You finish up your schoolwork at 11, you go and pull some weeds or organize your bookshelf or whatever age-appropriate job that they were able to do.
Yeah.
Or even things like helping me in the kitchen, learning how to cook, learning how to throw in a load of laundry, or clean my car, or whatever the task was.
And let me tell you something. Let me interrupt you for a second, because as you know, your kids came and stayed with me they were supposed to stay Memorial Day weekend and for 10 days. Well, I had COVID, and so they didn't get to come until Tuesday, but I was still feeling awful. And I kept apologizing. I feel so bad. I knew I wasn't giving them anything because the fever had broken and all that. But I reaped the benefits of that because your kids basically took care of me. Claire was cooking breakfast, and Jack was going to the grocery store and grilling kebabs and picking up a sub from Substation. And then I would just be dying. When I say that, I'm just saying I really was. It's the sickest I've been since 2018 when I had the flu. But I was fine. I'm not saying that it was the worst ever, but it was miserable. But anyway, I'm just throwing that in that you taught them to do all that, and I was a beneficiary of it in June.
And that blesses me to hear that. Because I think all moms and dads want their kids to know how to work, to know how to take care of themselves, to know how to help someone else.
And to take care of me.
And another thing during that time was it was just a sweet time too. And even our family dynamic with having the boys first and then the girls. And they were able to establish and build deep friendships with each other as they played, or even as they fought some days, like learning to forgive, me being the mediator of that and helping walk them through that. I mean, I always kind of think of it, well, before I say that, then Jane died, the kids go to their hybrid. It was December of 16, and I never know, this actually sounds like a bad mom, but I'm just being honest. And obviously God was faithful. That
right.
I feel like around Christmas of 2016 was really the first time like I really had like a deep conversation with Jack, who was 10 at the time. And not that, of course, I always asked him, how are you? We provided the things he needed or would help him with things if he needed it. But I just mean where your mind, most of the time I was doing that, my mind was not on.
Right.
I was doing the next thing because I needed to do it. They couldn't do it for themselves. But I remember it was late at night one night, and we sat up for several hours talking, and he did not love the setup that he was in with his school. And we talked about it, and, Jack's always been, he's like an old soul. Like, I always, he's my kid, obviously, so probably every mom says this. I feel like Jack's always been, like, mature beyond his years. And so you're having this conversation, then you step away, and you're like, only 10. Like, I shared all that with Jordan the next day, and I had some other medical things. I was going to another state to actually participate in a clinical trial, and I knew we were going to be gone for a while, and the school that we had, part of my homeschooling journey too also was I really wanted our kids to participate in standardized testing every year.
Right.
And again, I know everyone is on the spectrum of what they think about those. And
we did that too.
Right. But my thing is I really wanted that as a barometer for me.
Sure. Of course.
It was like, and I know that's not the end all be all. And I know some of your kids, which I have some of them, are nervous testers, and then other ones fly through it with, so easily. But for me, I was like, no, I want to do that. And then I took it even a step further, and I was like, I'm going to basically cold call the school that if our kids ever went to it would be the one school we'd let them go to, and ask if our kids who are homeschooled could participate in their standardized test week.
Right.
And I remember speaking to the person then, and they were like, well, no one's ever requested that, but let us call you back. I mean, I kind of thought, are they really going to call me back? Sure enough, they called me back several hours later, and they basically were like, if your children know how to act and how to behave, and wear a navy blue top and khaki bottoms the week they're here, and you pay for the test, they can definitely participate. In fact, they can then stay for a Friday science fair.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, wow, that's really cool. And so, as I told you guys, Jordan and I always felt like we were taking it year by year. We never said, like, we're doing this forever, no matter what. We never said we weren't. We just said, I don't know.
Right.
And so the same school that I'd kind of built that relationship with, I just called. Jordan and I were like, we need to call that school and see if they have a slot for Jack to start after Christmas. So we called them, and they knew about Jane, and they knew about all the things. And they were like, yes, we have room. I mean, we went in there one day, met with them. We're so thankful. They were so kind and caring and loved Jack and loved our family. But I mean, I remember saying, like, you are now going to have my child 35 hours a week. Like, I need you to communicate with me. Basically, there's nothing too dumb to not tell me. Like, I want you to tell me anything you can tell me. But they're like, oh, rest assured, we have these things that we send home every day in elementary. Communication sheets where the teacher fills them out every day about highs and lows and tests coming up. And it was perfect. But we also told them we may just be putting Jack here for one semester.
Right.
And we don't know. But we know we need him to be here now. He's old enough where, like, we don't want him floating.
Right.
So, I mean, that worked out, and it was good, and Jack loved it, and it was good academically. It was good spiritually. He was building friendships. And I remember being in Chicago where I was for this clinical trial, and Jordan and I one Saturday were like, I think Luke needs to go there next year. Those two had always had such a good bond together, Jack and Luke. And we wanted, I felt like we'd kind of like split them apart by not doing the same thing. And I know they were in different grades, but
still,
the school they were at was a smaller school where they interacted at lunch, recess, chapel, all the different things. They definitely knew each other's friends, teachers, everyone.
Right.
So we ended up, that was the beginning of Jack and Luke's like full-time school journey, which I think, if we hadn't lost Jane unexpectedly, I don't know if that would have been accelerated at those ages. But, I don't know that because we did, and that's what God's had for us.
That's right.
But we put Jack and Luke there. We didn't feel like Grace and Claire were ready yet to go into full-time school. I always have this thing in my head, and I always have told Claire especially, because she's the one I feel like we talk about school the most with. I'm like, I've been saying to her the past couple of years, you're not quite ready to like be launched into full-time school yet. And we talk about what that meant. And I'm like, there are just more things I really want to like get more solidified under your belt, like more time spent here at home before I send you out. And again, I'm not making a statement on if your kids are in full-time school that it's bad. I'm just saying
I understand. Yeah.
So, we found that it's an online academy called Veritas Online Academy. It's out of Pennsylvania. And my girls have been doing that the past few years, and actually they've loved it. And really with that, I was like, I wonder if they're going to want to do this forever, which we wouldn't have cared. It was always kind of weird to me, and especially when I would pray, I did want all of our kids to be doing the same thing in the same place. But then that was another area where it was like, is this just like some Maureen made, like, you're supposed to do this? But I don't know, like every year it was like, keep what you're doing with the boys at school and the girls at home because they like it and they want it. And then the things you have them in, they enjoy. They were able to pursue like piano and art even more, which they both really love, and they have more time for that. But then this year, Jordan and I both felt like, no, it's time for them to all be together at the school. And so we will start that August 11th, next Thursday, which will be, that's very bittersweet for me, if I'm honest.
I'm sure.
It's like I'm so excited for all the kids. And even our older kids, you can just tell that they love the fact that their sisters are going to be there.
Yeah.
That like all the Brogy kids who are here will be together. And not that some of them are even going to see the other ones during the school day necessarily, but I think for them it's like comforting knowing all my siblings are here. And, so what I would say with that is that's just been another journey of like us pursuing and asking the Lord to show us and to make it clear. But also potentially, like I said, I didn't know Veritas, the online school, was going to be the end for them. They would continue to do that, which would have been fine and great. But that's just not what God's had for us now. Right. And He's opened up all these doors at the school for our family to be involved. And I don't know. We feel very much at peace about it, and we feel good, and our kids are excited, and we're excited for them. But yes, of course, I have one child who, when people ask, like, what do you do? Talking to me. And he's like, well, she's retiring as of August 11th.
And you say, like, no, I'm going to be in your business.
I know. It's just funny, though, like, because I have been homeschooling for 12 years.
Yeah.
And I've never, since I've had kids 16 years ago, I've never not had one or many kids at home with me during the day.
Right.
So it's going to be different for me. It's going to be a new season. And then, but I do want to say I'm excited about what the Lord has for me. Like, there's a women's Bible study at our church that I've always been like, that would be so good to be a part of. But it's always been on Tuesday mornings at 9:30, and I have not been able to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, but now I probably will be able to be a part of that. So, and then different school opportunities to potentially lead a Bible study for one of the girls' classes and be involved in their sports and be there to pick them up and when they get home. And
well, I'm glad it reminds me, I'm glad you said that because it reminds me of you like leading that Bible study when your boys were at Stonehaven, when you led that girls' Bible study and I know God used that in a wonderful way in the lives of those girls. I could tell just when I visited there. So there'll be doors like that will be opened up for you as well because, again, your kids are in a really good Christian school from the top down. It's teaching a biblical worldview, which is super important too. It's very important. It's also very rare now. I know. Yep.
And so, because it's Christian,
doesn't
on paper, doesn't necessarily mean in practice that it is.
Right.
And, so we have done, to talk to that ever before we even sent Jack and Liz doing homework on things, as much as you humanly can do,
Right,
I mean,
right.
sometimes you might just end up finding out some people have been telling you something that's not even true. We
Right.
have not experienced that to this point, and
Right.
we've been pleased. But I will also say this, that, I have a lot of people who ask me this, and so I'm sure maybe some listeners are wondering this, but they're like, what's better, homeschool or school, now that you've done both? And I always just say to all of it, none of it is perfect, like full-time school or homeschool. It's not perfect because sinners are at both of them. And
Right.
so the hard days still exist at the homeschool level or at the full-time school level.
Right.
And yes, there are things, yes, and I'm not going to sit here and say that there have not been days that we picked up our kids from school that have, things that they'll tell us that they've heard from peers or experienced or whatever, that in my mind, I think some of it because it's like the first time and it's like, oh, is that like the worst thing ever? But then Jordan comes along and usually helps walk me through that because I tend to be extreme fast. And he is just like, Maureen, that's not the end of the world. This is not like about God or where they stand or
Right.
it's just we know that every person in this school does not necessarily have a personal relationship with the Lord. So why are we trying to expect from kids who may or may not know the Lord to be little lights all the time?
Right.
So there are things that we deal with and we walk our kids through, and we have talked about, and we pray about, and we look to the scripture about what does God say about that?
Right.
Is that wise to do that? Maybe it's not black and white, but I don't think it's wise. And so I am thankful for the few years the boys have been in school because we've had so many great, rich conversations. Yes, times of frustration. Yes, times, because I do think that I would even go on the record and say this. I think homeschooling is super, if it's done properly, that it's just more efficient because you don't have all the fluff. Like, you don't have to have 2 snack breaks. You don't have to have a recess. Like, you could literally just get up at 7 a.m. if your kids are up and you're ready and start your school day. Every day be done before lunch.
Right.
And so
that's true.
So I'm not going to say that I already know going into it, there will be days for the girls to be like, oh, we have homework. And I know I'll probably say to Jordan, that's so frustrating. Like, they've been at school for 7 hours. Now they have homework.
I know.
But then I have to go back to no, we have prayed about this a lot. And we just like our family is called there. It's not a flippant decision. It's serious. And we're still going to take it year by year like we always have.
Right.
And our kids know that, hey, because they'll sometimes say, so is this the forever school? And I'm like, I don't know. Like,
Well,
I don't know.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was
No, I was just saying that, like also, I think being honest with your kids in that, hey, if God moves us in a different direction, we're going to follow.
Yeah.
So that may be uncomfortable for everyone involved sometimes, but if he does that, we have to be obedient.
Yeah, and one of the things that impresses me about y'all too, like even revisiting the thing that when people say, "Oh, so what are you going to do now that all your kids are in school?" The thing is like y'all are such involved parents that even if your kids are at the Christian school for those hours during the day, you're still going to be involved in their lives. You're going to want to know, what they're doing, what you want to hear about their day. You're going to be involved. Like as parents who check out, they think, oh, my kids are in school now, so I'm just going to check out and do my own thing. Y'all, good parents aren't that way. They're still involved. And I don't mean hovering, but I mean they want to see how their kids are developing. Just like you said, things you have to talk about, things they're going to tell you about when you pick them up or when you're with them at the end of the day. This happened today, and if you had that line of communication because you've always had that relationship with your kids where you talk about everything, there's just going to be more things to talk about. You know how we've talked about how when kids become teenagers, okay, we're not changing diapers anymore, we're not doing all the things that are so time consuming, but everything is time consuming as it deals with matters of the heart, as it deals with friendship issues, as it deals with dealing with a teacher. They still need so much time from us. It's just a different kind of time.
And I always, I try to I think of it this way too. What you're saying is true about the time, and it's shifting a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think of like when they're little, maybe 8 and under, especially 5 and under. Like your job as a mom, if you're at home and raising them, and the primary influence on your children, it's very physically demanding.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're tired, like you're doing this, you're doing that. You may have plans for the next hour or whenever one wakes up from a nap, but guess what? Maybe some kids will scream for the whole 2 hours during their nap, and you won't go to the playground after people get up. Like,
right.
You have to be very like flexible and know like man plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps. But I think about now that our kids are older, and even Grace, who she'll be 11 in a few months, but it's so much. It's not that it's physically taxing anymore. It's more that it's like it's heavy mentally.
That's
and
right.
Like talking. And yes, the physical, because I don't know what it is, but teenagers start talking when it's way past my bedtime.
No kidding.
But it's like you have to make the choice.
That's
and
right.
Even in that, asking the Lord to help you. Help me even though I'm exhausted.
Right.
Like to be present and to hear them and for them to know I care and I'm listening. And moms, I will tell you, like whatever school decision, number one, like be walking with the Lord and following him. But then you and your husband pray together and give that to the Lord. Like God is concerned about your children more than you are. And so he is going to make that decision very clear. And there may be sacrifices on either end, whatever God calls your family to, whether it's full-time school or whether it's homeschool. There may be sacrifices that you have to give up. And I'm not necessarily talking about financial even. I'm just talking about maybe the way that you thought things were going to go, but God's calling you in a different direction.
Right.
And so for your kids, too, to see that you're obedient in that and that you have always had their best interest, even down to, arithmetic, you care what they're learning and how they're learning it. And you're also teaching them in that to be diligent, to do all their work heartily as unto the Lord.
Right.
Instilling in them that all this does matter. All this matters because God made it.
Yeah.
And like the more we learn at our academics, it even helps us to understand God in a deeper level, to understand history and science and math. Like none of it's just by chance. Like God's our creator and he has made it all.
Yeah.
And we get to learn it and enjoy him through it. And being with your kids, I just think, my prayer is that I'm always able to just be with them after school. And again, I feel like there's always people that are like, so you never not see them after school. And I'm like, no, I mean, generally that I love my favorite thing since my kids have been in school is picking them up and seeing their faces.
Right. And being there when they come home. Yeah.
Because I feel like, and I don't know if this will ring true with the girls or not, so I'll have to maybe talk about that in a future episode. But I feel like with my boys, and I'm not saying anything they wouldn't. I say this in front of them and it's not a secret, but I feel like there's a critical time for, and I don't know if it's a boy thing or if it's just you've been at school all day and you're exhausted, but when they get in the car and I see their face, it's like I can tell it was a good day, a bad day, a hard day, or like what happened. Like your kids just like your babies cry.
Right.
And then they get in the car and they're ready in the ride home to kind of just like dump out all of their thoughts.
Right.
And then Jordan will come home 2 hours later at the dinner table and it's like, oh, tell him about your day. And it's like, they don't remember anything that they told me. And for them, and then Jordan will be like, did anything else happen? And I'm like, boys, remember you told me X, Y, Z? Like, tell your father. Let him weigh in on this.
You'll have to put the recorder on in the car and then play it.
I know. I probably should start doing that. But it's like how important it is.
Yeah.
For kids to know, like, my parents care.
That's
they
right.
Want to ask me questions. And my kids already know this. Like, of course, they're going to meet new friends every year, and I want them to have friends. But it's like, I've got to meet your friends. Like, invite your friends over here. Like, we've got to get to know them. Like, we know more than you do, believe it or not. And so there's just all the things that go along, maybe that come a little earlier.
Yeah.
Than maybe in the beginning I thought we're going to, I always kind of in my head thought our kids would go to a brick and mortar school in high school.
Yeah.
But, it happened for our family a little earlier and it happened in stages. But, I don't regret any of it, but I certainly don't regret 1 minute I spent with all of them at home.
Yeah.
Teaching and training them.
Well, what a foundation.
Exactly. And I think, there's so many things that we get feedback on as parents, and a lot of it, I think God is blessing our endeavor to be their primary influence, and I think He does that, and I think He honors that. And again, I know that everyone's story is different. There are single moms listening who are not able to be there when their kids come home from school, but God covers that, and He is faithful. That doesn't mean it's not hard some days. But I think for our family, Audrey, it's just there's been a lot in recent years, but God's never left us. He's never forsaken us. And He's always, when we've asked for wisdom, He's always been faithful to give it.
Yeah.
And even in times where I've questioned or wondered, and then for us women to willingly submit underneath our husband's leadership, if he is someone who's upright and walking with the Lord. Psalm 84 says, no good thing does the Lord withhold from those who walk with Him. And I just think no good thing. I mean, you could look at that either way. I mean, I could look at that and say, well, obviously the good thing for me to walk really well or to run is not, God doesn't have that for me right now. And maybe never on this side of heaven. Yeah. But also, God has given me these children to steward, and He wants me to know what He wants for their best. So thank you for this topic, because it is so timely, and it is very hard, moms. Audrey, you would attest to that. You're always going to wonder if you're doing the right thing or the right job, or if you messed up. And you will mess up, but it's okay. Own your mistakes. And even tell your kids that when they're old enough. That, hello, you're not perfect in that. I mean, I think of mine and Jordan's prayers are that our mess ups are just on the minor things.
Yeah.
So, and I've gleaned a lot of that. Again, I always want to plug your teaching, Audrey, to these women listeners, just wisdom and depth, and not just to be simple-minded, but we're only going to have this wisdom given to us if we dedicate time to be in God's Word.
That's right.
So I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful for the Lord, and I'm thankful for homeschooling and for Christian school, and for all the teachers getting ready to go back that pour into our children's lives, and moms. Just thank you to any of those listening.
And we'll have to keep praying too for the solid Christian schools like y'all's and others, that they will stay faithful to the Word of God.
Right.
Like the one that's here in Beaufort that a lot of our students go to, it's so solid. The leadership is solid, and we just pray all the time that they would stay solid. They wouldn't go woke. They wouldn't go, crazy. That they would stay faithful to the Word of God, because we need that. We need that because at least we know when the kids are going to brick and mortar Christian schools, if they hold fast to the faithful Word, they're not being indoctrinated from the top down. Because I know sometimes people say, oh, it doesn't matter. Kids, are going to have a bad influence no matter whether it's a Christian school or not. But they're not being indoctrinated from the top down. And that is critically important. Especially, it's always been important, but it's especially important today that their teachers and their leaders and the people who are over them are holding fast the faithful Word. And so we need to pray for that. In fact, while we're closing out, we've gone for a while, but why don't you just pray, Maureen, as you close out a prayer just for parents and their children, and the Christian schools and the homeschools, that God would hold them fast, and then we'll close it out.
Yes, Father, we do thank you for this opportunity to just talk about the ways in your faithfulness in our lives as we have been raising our kids and teaching them first to know you and how to know your Word, but Father, then to educate them, because you've called all parents to be the primary educators of their children. So Father, I pray for all the parents out there that you would grant them wisdom as they seek it. They would pursue you to get godly wisdom as they make decisions pertaining to their kids' school. Father, I do pray that you would just come down in those homes and be with those parents. May they see the need to walk closely with you, to hold a tight grip onto your Word, and for their family to love you. And even if it looks different from the world, Father, I pray that they would be able to stand firm, that these schools, the good ones that are left, Father, I pray that you would bless the headmasters and the board members, and that they would see the importance of not straying from the truth, not even in little ways and brushing it off, because those often become big issues. And so, Father, I pray that you would give men and women, teachers and principals, administrators, moms and dads, just a boldness to stand firm for you as they raise this next generation. Thank you, Father, in Christ's name. Amen.
If you enjoyed this episode of Rare But Real, be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified when a new episode is posted. And share this podcast with friends. Follow Audrey on Instagram and Facebook at Mothering from the Heart. And listen to all her messages on the Search the Scriptures app.